Hey there viewers, welcome back to Brave All Trades. This one was dropped off. Chain won't move. First thing you want to do is try to pull the chain brake back. You'll notice it doesn't want to reset. When you pull it back, chain still really doesn't move. I can tell you that pulling on the starter seems to be bound up. Doesn't really want to turn anything. And something I noticed was the chain is loose on that side. But look how the nuts are on the bar. The nuts, this one here is not even bottomed out. And this one here is somewhat bottomed out, and the case is kind of hanging off to the side. See that chain adjuster right there? Chain adjuster bar that's connected to this screw right here. And by the way, the case is bubbled out right here as well. It's pushing on the bar, not inside the hole of the bar. So basically, the bar wasn't inside the chain adjuster. Somebody tried to tighten it up with that on there. And then look how the chain brake is. So the chain brake's not even around the drum, and it's somewhat bent. This chain brake obviously has gone way beyond. But you'd want to grab the case, grab a vise, grab something like that, put something to press against, and you can usually push down and reset it. There you go. And then that's the reset position. So if it was tripped, it would be in that forward position, that locked position. We have to put a new brake on here anyway. Very likely, somebody put it on there, tried to start it up, ran it, and burned right through the brake band. Just to make sure that's our only problem, now that turns like it's supposed to. I'd like to know why the motor's... There we go. So the motor pulls over now. So we got to get a brake adjuster for this thing. I do want to fire it up before we get too far, just to make sure that I'm not buying parts for something that might be burned up. So let's get it started without a bar and chain on it. Just make sure she pops off and runs. So choke out, the stop switch is over in that position. Let's make sure she's got some gas, and it just sprayed on me, so I'm guessing that it does. There's the Husqvarna 142, but this same thing applies to all of them. So let's see if we can get it fire off. Whoa, that's a ton of compression. It's way too much for this little saw. If you guys watch my videos at all, you know what my next step's going to be. We're going to take a look at that cylinder and see what's going on. Two T25s. I don't believe this is a T27. Oh, I was wrong. It is T27. These saws aren't real expensive when you first buy them, so you want to be careful about putting too much money into them. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Hard to pull over. Yeah, she's not even trying to fire. Lots of corrosion on the top of that plug. See all that corrosion on the top? I'll be surprised if I got a spark out of that. Well, I do get a spark. I don't smell anything but old stale gas. Put a little bit of premix in there. Just want to see what kind of condition we have before I give them a price quote, sink some money into it. I think it's a starter. Either that or those bearings are shot. Alright, no matter what, gonna need a carburetor rebuilt. Needs a new brake band. Definitely needs a spark plug and an air filter. That's tight, but it's not where my tension's coming from. I've had 90cc saws pull over easier than this little bitty 30cc saw. Yep, that's what stale gas in the tank. And she is really hard to turn over. So this one might be a part saw. I'll see what he wants to put into it. Hey guys, we are back on the Husqvarna 142 that had a broken brake band. This chain adjuster had pushed its way through the outside of the casing and needed quite a bit of work. The recoil was hanging up a little bit. Ordered a rebuild kit for that. It's a new spring and everything. I am going to take it apart. It's possible it just needs to be cleaned. It was loaded with old gasoline. The crank was extremely hard to turn, even without a spark plug in it. And I've been working it back and forth, and it seems like it's starting to free up. I am concerned that it picked up some water and stuff, so I'm not out of the woods yet as far as possibly taking the jug off of it. Carburetor was gummed up, the air filter was bad, and these saws, you can find them refurbished or whatever you want to call it for a couple $100, the replacement for it. The owner actually has an attachment to it, so he wants to fix it. I ordered some parts, a new muffler, because this one the inside of it had rotted completely through, and so I've got a new muffler coming. Hasn't arrived yet. I ordered a new aftermarket chain brake assembly. It's a knockoff, but not bad condition for what it is. Doesn't have the logos and stuff because, like I said, it's not OEM. OEM parts on this would have been way too much money. We would have far exceeded the replacement cost of the unit. Ordered another kit off of Amazon. I'll link both of these in the description. This chain brake and also this rebuild kit. Came with a new air filter, new fuel lines, new spark plug, brand new carburetor. Whenever you guys get one of these, make sure the screws are tight. I have had so many of them that the screws basically were sitting loose and it causes an intake leak. It's like a new fuel filter, some fuel line, filter mounting plate, a couple of carburetor gaskets. So let's get the fuel out of this thing, see what we can see. I don't know if you guys remember when we looked in the exhaust port, the piston looked really good. I would have swore up and down with the binding that I'm feeling, or I was feeling with the cylinder, that I had a scored ring. Anyway, let's pull off the carburetor and air filter and see if we see anything on the intake side. I just got a feeling it was sitting so long that the gasoline and oil evaporated and left a coating on the bearings. Caused it to feel funny, but it's moving really well now. It's very possible I might have condemned it a little bit too soon. Maybe an okay saw. He likes it. He's had it, I think, since it was brand new. Had it a while. He just wanted to fix it. And for most things, I mean, especially if it's mine, I'll take the effort and try to fix something just because I hate seeing it thrown away. When you're talking about for somebody else, you don't want to spend their money without giving them a good education as far as what they're up against. Because a lot of people, they don't realize what they're spending. They just assume they trust you, so they know that you're going to do it right. If you go through the entire repair and not tell them that they're possibly spending more money than what the item's worth, then you're not really going to have customers for long because they're going to figure it out. With any business, honesty and communication are always the best policy. That nut is turning the screw behind it. I'm still going to have to drain the gas. I'm just jumping the gun a little bit here. Just curious to see what I'm looking at. Well, I may have to hit this with an impact just so I can spin it off fast enough. Once I see what the backside looks like, I'll be able to tell you guys, as there's probably something that you can reach in and hold or grab or whatever, but the impact will spin it off fast. Looks like the bolt came out with it. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to reach in and grab this the shoulder of that mounting bolt to pull that off of there. So I'm not really sure if maybe it got cross-threaded at some point, if it just came loose. Try to hold that bolt and take it off, see what I get. Go. The back side of that plastic housing, these bolts had a hex nut on the end of them. See if I can get this out so you can see it. So the bolt has a nut built into it, and it must have come loose. The nut outside the filter, or the filter housing, was bound up on here, probably from all this dirt. I don't know what else is on here. There's something on this, probably keep it from vibrating loose. But anyway, that wouldn't let me grab this. So you might have been able to shove a appears to be 9/32 I'm sure it's metric, but 9/32 was able to hold that. So you might be able to stick a wrench behind there and grab that head of that bolt to get the other one, the 10mm, off of there. Couple of Phillips heads down on the bottom. Pull off this plate. The ground wire is on this side right here. This one Phillips head screw went in that way, and then that plate pulls out. So let's pull off the throttle linkage. It just fishes out through there. The choke linkage, not cooperating. So let's do it the old-fashioned way. Just pry it out. Take the carburetor off. I'm going to clean all that out. And looks like we got one fuel line coming off of this thing. And it's a really old fuel line. Just drain all the gas out of this. I can smell it. It smells old. Some old gas. Compare this carburetor to that one. Those look identical. I'll call it a win. Like I said, always verify the screws are tight. Let's see what it takes to get a new fuel line in here. I do not think the diameter of this line and the diameter of that line are significantly different. Down the bottom of this hole right here, that's where the fuel line goes into the tank. Sometimes that's a rubber grommet, and it will allow for a different size fuel lines to go through there. And sometimes it's a piece of plastic like this one, that the only way to get a larger size diameter fuel line in there is to drill it. The best way to handle it, take your caliper, figure out what size that hose needs to be, and you want it somewhat snug because you remember you need that to seal up. And then use your drill index and find the closest drill bit size to that. And I'm looking at a number 17. Appears to be a really close fit. If nothing else, a little bit on the small side. I drilled it with a number 17. I used the micrometer to compare my fuel line size to the drill bit size that I needed. I'm going to cut that on a, what's that, the bias? Anyway. And then I should have a fairly snug fit without feeling like I am tearing the hose in half trying to get it in there. Oh yeah, that'll work. Fuel line should be enough that it sticks out of the casing by about 4 inches or so. Drop a new fuel filter on it. And it should be able to drop and basically float around inside that housing. But you'd want it to be able to hit the bottom of the housing. So let's see, the old fuel line. Whoa. I am siphoning fuel out of the tank, didn't even know it. Loosen that cap back up, let air back in. That was cool. So the carburetor sits on there kind of like that. The line has to be able to come up, reach over the top of the carburetor, and come in and grab this fuel line right here. That might be about an inch too long, so let's go ahead and snip it. We can put our carburetor line on just for now. Match up our gasket. It gave us 2 gaskets, one with a hole in the middle and one with a hole on the side. The one that's here appears to have a hole in the middle. So line up your 2 bolt holes and make sure that the hole lines up with the impulse line. That's critical. This small hole needs to be exactly in the middle when these 2 bolt holes are in line. And on the carburetor side, It's going to be the one that has the, there's two that have an indentation, but one of them actually has a hole. And if in doubt, just compare it to the other carburetor. This one sits on there just like that. Fuel line tucks in back behind a groove right in here. A route up over the top like that. There's another gasket on this side. And then a plate. It should go something like that. Went through plate, then gasket, then carburetor, then other gasket, and this one has that hole up here at the top in the very middle. That's your impulse line. I've talked about that before. The impulse line takes the positive and negative pressure of your piston going up and down to drive your fuel pump, basically. That connects over to your metering diaphragm. Alright, so I just learned a little trick to try to share with you guys. We're going to put the gasket and carburetor in place first, and we're going to line those up with these bolts. Make sure that they thread in. Yep, they do. So now I'm going to take and hold forward pressure on that carburetor so that inside gasket doesn't fall. Now I'm going to put the outside gasket on and the outside plate on. And since I'm holding forward pressure, that gasket on the inside should still be in good place. Before I get too far, I'm going to take a flashlight and make sure that that gasket's still in place and hasn't fallen. Looks good on that side, and yep, looks good on that side. Okay, that was crazy. I took it off and on. I'll probably edit most of it out, but I took it off and on so many times, I was getting frustrated. I'm going to line these screws up before I get too far. Get these two Phillips head screws at least lined up, if not tightened down. Make sure that they're in the right position before we tighten up that carburetor. Phillips head screws hold down this metal bracket. They're loose right now. We're going to tighten up the carburetor mounting bracket that in order of moving in. Metal plate, gasket, carburetor, gasket, intake manifold. And like I said, I lined everything up with the bolts for the intake, held it in place by pushing forward on the carburetor while I put the rest, assembled the rest of it. Get these nice and snug. Let's slide this boot back on. I felt it drop into a groove. I assume that's normal. Let's tighten up these two Phillips head screws. Bottom of the mounting plate. Air filter mounting plate goes on. Looks like two 10mm. Let's move the choke to the closed position. Let's get the choke on. Drop that orange piece down in there. You can move the choke plate forward so you can line up the arm, or excuse me, the choke connecting arm to the mounting plate. I'm going to use a screwdriver to snap it in. So the throttle goes through that hole right there, goes across the top, drops down in there. Let's see. New filter, two flathead screws that you pulled out earlier from the old filter, like I just did without talking about. So I tried putting the screws in to the new backing plate. The holes that the screws are supposed to thread into are too big. I mean, not like it really needed one, but still. If you were in a jam and you had to use that, you can, there's a couple of tricks you can do. Number one is you can get well, first off, a larger screw. Not everybody wants to do that. You can also take and put a piece of wire inside that hole, like bend it on both sides, like shove it through, bend it down on both sides, and it gives something for the screw to bite a hold of. You can also do like I'm doing and put the old one back in, since there wasn't anything wrong with it. A little disappointing, because the only reason I changed it was because it came with a new one. $30,000 gap on the plug. Okay, this muffler has definitely seen better days. I'll write it out here on the front. The bolt holes that went through it were recessed into here. It's all cracked, missing everything else. Kind of a cool design muffler though. It came out the back side of the muffler. And it had a heat shield that kind of went around it like that. Exhaust gases are supposed to come out right here. Something strange though. It has a spot back here for the exhaust gases to leave also. And looking at this design, that would put those exhaust gases right back in here, which explains some of that carbon. Kind of a strange design. Came with the gasket, two fresh bolts, the two sides of the muffler, and then the exhaust baffle in the middle. The bolts should come through like that, slide on. The way I've got all the holes facing up and then the oblong holes facing down. Feed those through. The gasket goes on and line everything up. 5mm Allen wrench. Just tighten those down evenly. And this should be my recoil rebuild kit. Another aftermarket kit. If you tried to do this repair with OEM, we would have far exceeded the cost of the saw. We're close to that now. But the saw means something to a friend of mine, and he wants it fixed, so I'm doing everything I can to fix it. Looks like it comes with a new rope. Looks like the return spring handle. Actually, this might be the spring for the dogs that catch the flywheel, because there's a coil spring on the back side of here. That's cool. They wrap it up with an external wire to hold it in place. If you tried to pull that apart though, I'm sure it would spring apart. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. So they gave me a new rope. I'm going to use it. Okay, it looks like we need to keep the screw out of here. That holds the rope in place. Before we get too far, we're going to wrap everything the identical way. So what they're showing is that this rope went underneath that, like there. So it's coming out the hole, over the top, around, and under. I'm going to finish it off something like that. That's how the old one was set up. Held for, well, all the way up till now. Put the screw in to hold it in place. Get that snugged on down. Rope goes around this direction. Eventually it's going to find its way up through the hole. So we'll set this in place so the rope is prepped. Let's get this center screw out. There is a hole in here, and there is a metal tab on here. So that metal tab goes into that hole. I'll let you drop the screw in the top of that to hold it in place while we get the rest of this apart. So that's this part. All that comes apart. We'll lift this off. There is a coil spring underneath here that is sitting there like that, and then there is a loop down here on this side. I'll try to take it out so you guys can see it, what I'm talking about. If I pinch this and pull it out, it kind of looks like that. That's how it was in there. And that's what happens when you let go of them. I didn't mean to let go of them. So I've got this set in place. I'm going to attempt to push the spring down so that it releases the wire. Otherwise I have to hold everything in place while I cut that wire. Got the spring in place. The wire should be free now. It should be sitting in there just like that. You want to line that groove in that spring, the top of that spring. So you want it to be able to grab inside that slot. Give myself a space for that groove here, for that groove to drop inside there. Nope, that was almost too easy. I'm checking just to make sure that I captured springs back on me. Let's put the screw in place. I'm keeping positive pressure facing down just to make sure nothing pops up on me. That doesn't go bone crushing tight, because if you do, you'll see, like right now it's not turning on me. It can't turn because I've got this too tight. Back it up just a little bit until it frees up. You want it to move freely. Alright, now I'm just going to take and hold this rope, and I'm going to turn it this direction until I have enough tension. And it feels like I have enough tension right about one turn back, because if I were to let go, it pulls all the rope back in. Hold that there. Let's pull some slack and then shove this through the feed hole for the starter rope. And then while I'm still holding slack, I'm grabbing this rope. Let's pull it on out. And then you can either tie a knot or just keep close tabs on what you got right here. Rope feeds through just like that. And I like to tie a figure-8 knot. So that is over, twist this loop twice, and then feed the tag end up. If you've done it right, it looks like a figure-8 when you're done. And because I never cut this rope, there's really no reason to burn the tag into this. So, but a figure-8 makes a large enough loop to keep it from pulling through. If you've done it right, you should be able to pull it all the way out easily. It should pull itself all the way back in. So you don't need it to slam in, you know, but it's you want enough tension that it draws it all the way up. You don't want it to be sitting out loose like that. If it's sitting out loose like that, you want to go another wrap around. And there's our rebuild for that. I'm going to take a little bit of compressed air, blow all this stuff out of here, try to reassemble this thing. Because I forgot this air deflector. This is made to capture the air of that flywheel and send it up through this snorkel and across the cooling fan. Which way does this go? And it's actually got a couple of pinholes for it to drop into. 4 screws on the cover. 2 of them are machine style screw heads. 2 of them are coarse threads. The 2 machine screw heads go here and here, and the 2 coarse ones go here and here. So basically they make an X pattern. So put the starter cover on. If it doesn't drop right on like that one did, just give the rope a couple of tugs and it'll drop right on. You're just lining up the dogs. So machine screw, coarse thread, coarse thread. Mosquitoes here in Virginia are out with a vengeance. I'm going to go out on a limb and just put the top cover back on, knowing full well I may have to take it back off again. Spark plug's on, spark plug's tight, air filter screws are in, metal screws down there are in. Adjuster screws are flathead and exposed, so always good to know before you cover it up and not realize what kind of adjuster you're going to need. That feels much better than the first time I tried to start it. Make sure that hole there is clear. You can see the dental pick going back and forth. The oil is going to come through here up into that chain guide along the bar. Get some grease in the end of that bar. Oil passage is clear. Brand new cover. There's a pin down here on that cover. get it snug without tightening it up. Chain brake works. Feels a little stiff. I think this chain just needs a little bit of run time on it. So whenever I tighten up a bar, I always push the nose of the bar down. It simulates the pressure that you're pushing down on a block of wood and takes up any kind of slack. So you do that, and occasionally you'll see a whole bunch of slack develop. Let's make sure she still rotates. Let's get some oil and some gas in this thing and see if she fires. Make sure I put that cap on. I was running with my saws the other day and I must not have tightened up the gas cap. All of a sudden I felt something wet in front of me because I was cutting limbs. And yep, it was gas. See, about a half a tank of fuel, half a tank of oil. Pull the choke out, open up the garage door, get this thing outside, get you guys set up and see if I can get it fired up. That's the Husky 142 carburetor, muffler, rebuilt the starter. I'm having to adjust the jets a little bit fatter than I'd like, but it runs pretty good. It's operating like it's supposed to. Give it a few more cuts before I end up giving it back. If you guys enjoyed the video, a thumbs up would really be appreciated, and a subscribe really helps the channel tremendously. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hope you guys enjoyed it. See you on the next one.